Good day, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Tsetse Baloi, and I'm going to quickly get you through the webinar house rules. The first rule is that you should note that opinions and statements that are made during the presentation are They are those of the speaker and not necessarily the opinion of SAAFoST. This webinar will be recorded and will be available on the SAAFoST website within 7 days. For best viewing of the presentation material, please click on Maximize in the upper right corner of the slide window, then Restore to return to normal view. Please turn off other applications that require internet connection to avoid slow transmission and blurry vision. Audio is transmitted over the computer, so please have your speakers or headphones on and your volume turned up in order to hear. Questions should be submitted to the presenter during the presentation using the questions section at the right side of your screen. Click on the drop-down arrow, type your question, and then click Submit. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please note that when you're typing your questions, refrain from using acronyms to allow the moderator to easily read your questions out. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you the house rules. I'm handing over to Grant to present, to introduce today's speaker. Over to you, Grant.
Morning, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this SAAFoST initiative. You might find it a little strange that I'm called Barbara Kleinsmith at the bottom left-hand corner. Just to give you a quick update and to send the apology, Barbara Kleinsmith took ill and unfortunately will probably have to be hospitalized. She had a bad turn, so she sends her sincere apologies that she can't make it this morning. That's on the negative side. On the positive side, we've got Eric Labuschagne, who is on the program, and he will be talking to us this morning. Just a little overview of Eric, and I have to say that when we had this discussion at the Cape SAAFoST branch meeting, and we said we're going to put together sessions of innovations, Eric's name always comes to the top of my list when it comes to innovation. I think he's probably one of the most innovative young food scientists to come out of Stellenbosch, and probably the only one that I know that started his business before he even graduated. So he really takes food science seriously, and he's been very successful, and he'll give us an overview on what he's done since he did graduate. So as an ex-graduate from Stellenbosch Food Science, Eric Labuschagne, I hand over to you, and we look forward to listening to and hearing what you've got to tell us about innovation.
Perfect. Thank you, Grant. Great. Yeah, very, thanks a lot for that introduction. It's very, yeah, basically, wait, I want to make sure, can everyone see my screen, Grant? Maybe if you can just confirm that. I think you should be able to.
Eric.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks, Grant, for that introduction. Yeah, basically, I'll give a quick introduction. I wouldn't say I'm probably one of the most innovative. I think that's quite a tall order to say, but thank you for that compliment, Grant. So just a quick introduction to basically who I am, and then I'm going to run through my presentation, which really comes from my experiences that I learned through my own business, which is not mine anymore. But just in terms of tools and how to use those in large organizations. And maybe just to give you some background why I'm so passionate about innovation, entrepreneurship, breakthrough ideas, which we'll be speaking about today. So basically, about 13 years ago, I started my own business. Basically, I didn't actually know I was starting a business. I was just playing around, basically having fun. I was still at school and saw something on the television, a celebrity chef making something. I immediately went to the kitchen because obviously was procrastinating my last exam in matric, and I started making products, mostly confectionery and bakery products, and really found the process interesting and the creativity behind it. So I just kept on going that all day. eventually my mother that day, I still remember very clearly coming home, opening the fridge just in complete silence, saying, okay, well, you'll have to start selling. We won't be able to actually eat all of this. And yeah, actually that kind of struck a bit of a spark at that stage, and started phoning around. And just at that stage, it was back in 2008, was this big trend of farmers markets was really picking up. So used that as a platform to start selling some of these products, and it was a really broad scope of products and no real identity to it. And as the weeks went on, and basically I have to recall the exact amount, but I think it was in the region of about 1,000 Rand to go to Matric weekend at that stage. And I thought, okay, so what can I do with 1,000 Rand that could be, let's call it, a bit more valuable? So I paid 300 Rand for my first market table rent, and then I had about 700 Rand for cash flow, and started out of a household kitchen, baking products. And what was really valuable at that stage was, and I didn't realize this at the time, was having that direct interaction with the consumer, which obviously is very valuable. And I think that's something that large companies really miss out on, and it's actually very difficult to achieve. So basically, refined the list through every Saturday at the market, getting direct feedback from the people that were actually consuming the product, making changes during the week, and arriving the next Saturday with a new offering that was tailored to the feedback. So just without realizing that, going through this very lean startup method of refining a service or a product. Just as the time went on, I eventually took a gap year to decide what I wanted to study, and I was really not sure. And at that time, I wasn't even aware of food science. But close to the end of the year, I came across food sciences degree, and it seemed like a really interesting combination of science and sorry if everyone can just. So we just have a disclaimer. We've got a fire drill, so there's a few people that are confused. I knew about it. Basically, I got around and I found out about food science at close to the end of the year, and thought, well, that looks interesting. Enrolled, and definitely was a great choice. And I was set out a bit of a challenge at that time from my parents, saying that, well, can I use this business that I've now started? And at that stage, we moved if I say we, it's myself, and obviously I was operating in my mother's house, so there was some sense of ownership there and support. And then I had two ladies that started baking for me during the day. And we moved this operation to the garage and moved out the cars, and set up a small, call it industrial basic bakery in the garage. And I was set up this challenge if I was able to actually kind of fund most of my studies with this business. And I think the idea behind that was to see if I can keep the business going, as well as finish my studies probably as quickly as I can, having that bit of a financial pressure. And it worked out really well. The business really grew throughout my studies. It was very challenging, of course, and food science not being call it one of the easiest degrees that you can pursue. It does require quite a bit of time, but it really worked out at the end. Really supportive, group of lecturers, and can call them friends now at the food science department at Stellenbosch. Really understanding, especially in those practicals late on in the afternoon where I sometimes fell asleep. And really, they were really supportive on what was going on. So basically, fast forward closer to the end of my studies, the business has really grown, and I've gone through a process where I sold some shares to partners to assist the growth of the business. By that time, we really refined the concept of the business to a frozen bakery business, specializing in gluten-free bakery goods, and that was really around the new gluten-free trend that was growing phenomenally at that stage. I think really similar to what we see in some of the plant-based and botanicals, etc., at the moment, sorry, this fire alarm is kind of ringing in the back of my mind, and then basically we partnered with some shareholders to really accelerate the growth. There was a few opportunities, but we were always stuck in this catch-22 where we would approach a relatively large customer with a solution, and they would always ask, okay, what production facility do you have? What is your food safety that you've got in place? And if you don't have those, then you know, maybe contact us when you've got that in place. And that was always the catch-22. So we got to the stage where myself and my business partner at the time sat down and said, we're going to have to make a bit of a commitment here. We're going to have to take a bit of a chance, a bit of a risk, but we believe we can make this work. So he helped me set up a production facility in Paarl at that stage, and it wasn't massive by any means, I think, compared to the facilities that we've got access to now, as well as what most of you on this call probably have. And but it was a 600 square meters just down the road from Grant, in the beautiful Paarl. Very fond memories that we've got together, and brainstorming on creative products. But that's where the first really commercial production facility was for the business, and that was really a platform for us to enter into retailers. So from there, we started supplying some of the largest retailers in South Africa, and even went out to do some exports. And the product category or the product range from the business really grew as well. Always stayed true to kind of what we stood for. Always clean label products, high quality, high end products, and also always we had this mission of creating jobs for the local communities around the production facility, which obviously was at that stage also. We really focused on taking people that don't have any skill sets, and most of them were without a job at that stage, and then we would teach them skills specific to our manufacturing facility, and then they would obviously have a job. From there, a lot of them actually moved on to other larger opportunities, and obviously they created a better future for themselves, essentially, just by being willing to learn a new skill set. I would say that was definitely the largest driving force behind my motivation for the business, as well as passion for food and innovation, of course. So if I look back and I reflect on what really assisted this growth throughout the course of about 11 years in my business, there was really a few key things that I didn't realize at the time. And really I think to fast forward to the end of my journey with my own business is that in October in 2019, a group called Into Food acquired the business from me, and I actually now work for the group, and it's fantastic. It's a group of very entrepreneurial people, and very positive and passionate about our country as well, and doing good. It's showing that we care, which is one of the core values of the group as well. So there was really a lot of alignment between what I believed in and what Into Food stands for. And hence I'm still here. So what I basically did, one of my first things that I did when I entered the group is to look at, you know, what keep organizations back from innovating, and what can we do to encourage breakthrough ideas, innovation, creativity within large organizations. And I have to put in a disclaimer here that is much more complicated to do than I initially thought. So what I'll do today is that I'll share some of my research. I probably read close to 80 to 100 different articles on innovation, business case studies on what companies like Samsung, Google, Apple do to encourage innovation, and kind of pulled it all together into a called it a short presentation, which I'll run through really quickly. Just to jump in, what we'll cover off is, firstly, I think it's very important to just define why it's important and what innovation really means, things that hold innovation back, what is the great characteristics of innovation, the objectives that we kind of specifically wanted to achieve within Into Food, and then some tools to get this right. So that's what I'll speak a bit about today, and it's really about innovation for each one of you on this call would probably be slightly different. So this won't be a one-size-fits-all solution, but I hope that I can really inspire some of you today to go and read up a bit more on some of these topics. And there's going to be a few interesting articles that you'll be able to scan with your phone. So if you've got your mobile phone close by, you'll just use your camera application on your phone, and there's going to be QR codes as we go. You can just scan those, and it'll take you straight to the article. So just to give you a bit of background on why innovation is important, and if we look at two specific reports by McKinsey and KPMG, is that most executives, if you do research, you speak to any executive, they would tell you that innovation to their organization is crucial. And then you can follow up the question with how is your organization doing with innovation, and within most organizations they'll probably not be satisfied with the level of innovation. And that really is because I think in most organizations there's a bit of a lack of really going to define what innovation really means. And just some two interesting case studies that you can really go and read up on is interesting fact that Kodak actually had the first idea and first invention around digital cameras. Really never actioned on that, and companies like Sony took over, and really go and read up why that happened. We'll discuss some of those in the slides to come. And after this presentation, if you go and read those articles, it will really relate. Xerox also invented the first personal computer with an operating system. They really focused on one of their copy scanners, which was a really profitable product at the moment. And the famous story is Steve Jobs was actually given a tour of this facility, and he saw this personal computer, and he actually took that and created the first Apple personal computer, obviously making that a massive success. And I think it really comes down to defining what it means. Otherwise, it could be really costly in terms of your growth potential in your business, and cause probably quite a lot of frustration. So yeah, the two first two QR codes. If you've not done this before, just open your camera app, just hold it over one of the QR codes. There should be a little notification that pops up, and you'll be able to click on that, and it'll take you to the link. I'll also share this presentation, so if you're not able to do that at this stage, you'll probably be able to do that in this recording. Will also be available on the SAAFoST website later, so you will have access to that. So what does innovation really mean? And it's really about, and I think within the food industry, we often refer to innovation as exactly like product innovation, but that really is just only one area of innovation. Innovation can really be translated to operations, finance, commercial, and it really is about doing something different that adds a lot of value to that specific department. It can be internal in the business, it can be external, and just if we look at successful innovation, it's really isn't a program. Where we started off at Into Food is, we initially thought, let's create an innovation team, but what you're really creating then is a silo of people wanting to do something, and outside of that silo, nobody really wants to comply. You always have this kind of clash, and it really is a new way of thinking, a new way of working that's integrated into your business, and it's not just a project or a program, and it really forms part of your culture. And that's what we'll look at today, is how do we integrate that into your culture. just before we can do that, we have to look at what stops innovation. And inertia is obviously one of the largest ones. I think we have all experienced that, and we do day to day. And me sitting here, I have to do regular check-ins with myself to make sure that I'm not the cause of inertia within our business. And it really is natural to actually for that to happen. As long as we're aware of that, we can obviously be proactive about it. It really starts with senior management in a business. Nobody else in the business will follow if it's not portrayed by senior management. It really is about being busy as well. Daily routines, just getting into the thick of day-to-day work really stops us from thinking about new ways to do things. A really good conversation that I had, and I'll speak confidentially, so I can't mention the name, but they're really one of the food and beverage companies on the forefront in South Africa, and I've got a friend working there on tech, and his whole role is how do we, re-innovate how we do everything, business process flows, how do we automate certain mundane tasks and allow those people to do new tasks, to think about new solutions. I think it's also the fear of failure, obviously, and that's big. And that's also, as a manager in a business, you really have to be aware of that in terms of, allowing failure to happen within certain parameters, and possibly to be very clear about what those parameters are, and your colleagues in the business having an opinion, and them to be free about that. And I think the last one that we're quite familiar about is collaboration across silos as well. So characteristics of innovation is to be really entrepreneurial, to empower your people, collaboration across departments. One that I really enjoy is cognitive diversity, which is one that's quite difficult to achieve. Especially in your team when you appoint colleagues, you definitely appoint somebody that you really relate with, and that's where it sometimes becomes a difficult choice to say, listen, I should actually be employing somebody that's completely different, that thinks different. So that cognitive diversity is a really, really interesting, difficult one to achieve. Data-driven is a big theme these days. To be quick, we've got a specific tool to speak about being working quick and experimenting as well. I think that was quite interesting. It was mentioned on the previous webinar as well. And to be aligned, focused, and mission-driven, and methodical in terms of how do we approach experimentation. Just a quick outline. This was our mission, and we're still working on this, really work in progress. And it was really about inspiring our people to move the organization forward, and really creating a framework for them to operate in, to free them of those constraints that we just spoke about, and coming up with really innovative solutions to day-to-day stuff. So what we've really gone to then identify is what forms this core of innovation, and we refer to it as talent. It's our people, it's our colleagues. That's where it all starts, and that's probably the most important part of innovation. It starts with your colleagues, but for them to be able to operate innovatively and come up with innovative solutions, you have to create the right environment for them to operate in. And to support this, we have to create tools and equip them to do this. So this is kind of a triangle that we came around to, and it really focuses on people at the end of the day. One of those initial links on the first page of the presentation, the first QR code, the one on the left, it's a TED Talk, and it really speaks about where great ideas come from. It's a very, very well-known TED Talk, so some of you might have seen it before. And it really speaks to what we believe in. We often think that breakthrough ideas is this kind of light bulb moment of somebody sitting in a room, they've locked themselves up there for 3 days to come up with this brilliant idea, and that's very seldomly the case. It really is about people working together, ideas starting at one point, and we think this is what will a new solution that we'll bring to the market, and one of those colleagues have a discussion with another team at another production site, and there's a link that happens there, and a completely new solution actually comes from that. And that's why those silos are so important to break down. I think if I just think back about my conversations with Grant, and one of my favorite things to do was to walk down the road to Grant's office and have a conversation. And a lot of those times we wouldn't have a very fixed agenda around those conversations. And some of the greatest product ideas would come from those conversations. So if we throw this together, we've got talent, the environment operating in the process. Then we have to look at how do we encourage each one of those components of our innovation core to be more innovative. And we came up with a few characteristics that we want to achieve for each one of them. So for each business that you operate in, this will be different. So this is just an example of what we are working on. And just to give you some examples, for talent, we said it has to be diverse and inclusive, aligned and equipped and focused, and we believe that will create a talent environment for innovation. The environment that they actually physically operate in, they have to be empowered, they have to be operating entrepreneurially and collaboratively, and then the processes that we use in the business should be data-driven, fast and effective, and methodical. So there should be a bit of approach to a new opportunity. How do we experiment with that, and so forth. So then what we did is we really went to look at how do we build each one of these cores out. And I just mentioned that, and we went to be very specific on tasks that we need to do to encourage it. So it all starts with the people, the training, the alignment, workshops around what innovation means and creativity, and what is our approach in our business to get to that point. And I will later be sharing very practical tools on doing this. We also then said, well, it starts with senior management, as I mentioned, and instead of creating a silo, a specific team for talent, we said, oh, let's integrate it. So let's create innovation champions throughout our business. And there's no hierarchy coupled to these colleagues, which is the fantastic thing. It's really somebody that volunteers for that position, and in that way, you really know within each pocket in our business, you will have somebody that really champions innovation, and that they will drive it. And then it's really about creating those workshops and teaching people how to use the tools. Really focused, and that really comes down to alignment. And most importantly, I think what we have to keep in mind within our businesses, and when we speak about talent specifically, how can we ask our teams to be more innovative, to experiment, which inherently involves failure from time to time, if they've got KPIs that encourage them to do differently. And I think that's something that you have to have a very holistic approach to innovation, and to be really encouraging about it, accepting stuff like failure. In diversity inclusion, which is a very hot topic at the moment, and I think in South Africa we are blessed with one of the most diverse workforces in the world. So many different cultures, so many different backgrounds, and if we can find a really constructive way of pulling that together, it really is an amazing competitive advantage. And that's by the way, one of the really amazing things about South Africa. I'll share a bit of a personal story a bit later about just that I've experienced on that. The environment has to be very collaborative, as I mentioned, and a thing that I really do believe in is strategic partnerships outside our business. And I think one that we really miss out on in South Africa is collaboration with academia, with universities, in terms of developing intellectual property. And I think on the last webinar, it was one of the major topics was our Stellenbosch University collaborates with industry, and I really hope we can see a bit more of that in the future. We sit really talented people doing masters, doing PhDs on really amazing products, and you know, us as the commercial, industrial sector, literally 20-25 kilometers from Stellenbosch, can really leverage that. Entrepreneurial, that's one that I'm really passionate about. It's really about experimenting, and I think one of the amazing things that I refer to back into my personal story with my business at the farmers markets was really that, you know, coming up with an idea, pitching up that same week at the market, getting that consumer feedback. 7 days later, you've got a revision on that, getting new feedback, and refining, very quickly refining within a managed risk environment. That's a key I think term for a lot of the big companies probably on this call, is just how important that is to create an environment where you can experiment within boundaries and managing that risk. At the end of the day, you want to give the colleagues the freedom to explore, and that will create that. And through that, you do empower them. And the process is one that we'll focus on now for the rest of the presentation. Not so much being data driven. I think we're all quite familiar with that, and that's becoming a very hot topic. And obviously, data scientists being one of the most in demand roles at the moment. That's I think what a lot of the businesses are focusing on already. I think it really is about being methodical about our approach to experimentation, to innovation. And if we talk about, and I have to put a disclaimer, this is definitely not an original idea of mine. This comes through a lot of articles, and this one specifically I found through Harvard Business Review, and but it is mentioned through quite a lot of platforms, and it really it's really an amazing tool. BEANS is an acronym for behavior enablers. Oh, now I have to, it's on the next slide, so I'll jump in now. And N is for nudges, A is for artifacts. So, and I'll explain each of those elements on the next slide. But it really is a tool that you can use, and how this basically works is you identify in your business what are those specific inhibitors to innovation, what are those things like busyness, for instance, the lack of collaboration between departments. You can go and identify those specifics in your business that that inhibit innovation, and then you create a bean around that. And keeping in mind, we work with real people. It's behavioral science that we're talking about. How do we change the behavior of people to change the way that they work from a day-to-day basis? And this is what BEANS will do. It's a tool to change the behavior of people. And then also talking about tools like PDCA cycle, which is basically a tool through part of the lean process. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but just go and look it up if you're not. It really is a kind of a groundbreaking management and operations tool to use, where PDCA is, for instance, a way of keeping track. And when I mentioned it here in my business, it was actually a major turning point for us in terms of when we did quick experiments, even on a large scale supplying large retailers. If certain processes in the factory wouldn't work, a PDCA would be a very specific template that records what you did. You know, it's basically a hypothesis, an experiment, and a conclusion to that experiment that's filed, that anybody later on, for instance, 3 years from now, once some of you have moved on to another organization, can actually refer to that PDCA file, look what you've actually experimented, and take the learnings from there without going through the same learnings from the start. Speed is definitely, I refer to this again, the lean startup process, which I'll refer to next in my presentation. And this was referred to, I think it's original Stanford idea, where it's really a quick process to test new ideas. So I won't spend too much time on that. And this one is slightly different. You can really, I think the one from last week was really focused on the incubation and acceleration phases. But discovery is really that idea where a group of diverse people from different backgrounds get together around the table and throw some ideas on the table on a solution to a problem or a new product idea. That then goes into the incubation phases, where we really do what we often refer to as kitchen trials. But then where do you actually go and test that? Is it just with your colleagues internally, just with one of your customers? And I think that's where that farmers market setup was so interesting, because it was really an incubation phase. Getting feedback, drawing data once again from that market tests, and refining your solution. That will then follow through to acceleration, which is then testing it on a slightly larger scale, and once successful, go through to scaling. And then the last one, which is very important, is to continually measure that for continuous improvement. Now, I think to get to the really exciting part, and this really is a fantastic tool, you really can go read more about it, called Beans. And once again, that the BE is for behavior enablers, and it really is just tools and processes that make or encourage people to think differently. Artifacts are physical kind of artifacts that can be used to encourage this new behavior. And we live in a wonderful technological world, so this could be everything from a phone application that I know some of these companies have actually gone to create it. They obviously have really large budgets to do stuff like this, but you can really keep it simple as well, in terms of if you've got a boardroom, you can make it physical on the wall, and this could outline the beans that you're working on. And the nudges are really reminders and rewards to keep on reminding people to follow this new process. Some real examples, and this might sound really kind of theoretical, so to bring it a bit down and more practical, is the DBS Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Southern East Asia. You'll definitely recognize the logo if you don't know the bank. But historically, they used to be very poor, very slow, had extremely bad customer service. And they got a new CEO that had to kind of solve this problem. And so Beans was actually one of the core tools that he brought in to re-innovate. And I can't remember the exact colleague count that they had. It might be close to 70,000 if I'm not mistaken. And he really described DBS Bank. From this point on forward, we will be a 72,000 people startup. So it really put people in a position to think differently. And just two examples of the beans that they incorporated was, the first one I really like, because that's one I think we all struggle with: busyness. So they tackled busyness throughout the business with a bean called 70-20-10. So 70, that's a percentage ratio, by the way. 70% will be spent on your day-to-day work, and then you have to dedicate 20% to work that's not directly your work, but related in your department. And then 10% of your time every day should be dedicated to experimenting specifically on areas that's not related to your work. And that could be, building an automation tool to send emails to when changes on the document happen, etc., etc. So I think that was really an encouraging way, and that was a enforced being from senior management downwards throughout the organization to get rid of that busyness, which keeps us so much back from innovation. And on, I think, a very interesting topic as well as the Mojo, which is one of the other beans that they used, which is an abbreviation once again for meeting owner and joyful observer, where the meeting owner would drive the meeting and they'll make sure that the meeting starts on time. The joyful observer would really sit and observe, make sure that everyone in the meeting had equal say and that the meeting wasn't a waste of time and it ended on time as scheduled. And then joyful observer would, at the end of the meeting, give feedback to the meeting owner on how effectively they drove that meeting. And this had to happen in every single meeting. And that way they got rid of these kind of useless 1-hour meetings that we so often have, to create more time so that we can experiment a bit more. And I think what's really important, if we look at that and we implement these tools into our business, is really to to continue to measure it. And there'll be a subjective and objective, and subjective would really be a questionnaire, for example, that we send through the business, getting opinions from colleagues. I refer to stakeholders, and that could be your customers as well, suppliers, just on how things are improving. And then you have your really objective, kind of quantitative, actually, ways of measuring this. And it's really about, you know, how do we improve our cycle times on innovation? Is it new product launches or changes in factory processes, for instance? And that you can really measure, as the second one says, in terms of, you know, what are the actual cost savings, for instance, in these operations. And I know a lot of our, for instance, our production facilities and operations teams are doing fantastic work on this, and they incorporate lean where they can, and so forth. So, and then market share changes is obviously the goal at the end of the day, right? Is for us to grow our market share through innovation as a key part of our strategy. It is important to note this is a sliding scale, and it is about balance. If you really focus too much on innovation, you'll get a very unstable platform or environment actually and you might actually lose some of your credibility that you already have. So, you know, your business might be fantastic in its operational capacity and consistently deliver really good results in services and products. And innovation to an extent could be a threat to that if not managed correctly. And the other side of the scale would be if you don't do any innovation, at the end of the day, you could become completely irrelevant. And that is that. That is my contact details there. Once again, you can scan that QR code with your phone's camera. You should be able to get a business card from myself, which you could just save should you have any questions. But I think we'll have a Q&A session on the call as well at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for that. I made a couple of interesting notes myself, but I think what made it really relevant was that you based it on personal experience combined with all your book reading. So having said that, I see we've got 30 people out there. If there are any questions, please send them through so we can put them to Eric.
So, Grant, I can't see the questions, but you can just let me know.
Yes.
I think while we were waiting, I'll just I mentioned South Africa, and I really this is something that I wanted to mention in the start with my business experience in the business is that you know, I definitely wasn't a very privileged you know, I think situation when I was young to be able to do what I did. I had the opportunity. My father lives in Europe. He's been there for quite a number of years, and I had the amazing opportunity to actually move to Europe when I finished school, and actually went there in my gap year for about 2 months. Europe, obviously, being very organized, very established, I really missed the excitement of South Africa. Actually came back. I was re-energized to really drive this business, and I really do believe South Africa is such a wonderful platform for new businesses, as well as large businesses to kind of start up with new categories, new innovations in the global context. I think we've got such an amazing agricultural supply, everything through from front to back, diverse talent, and it really is. It's ripe for making an impact. And there's a lot of companies in South Africa that already do.
Well, interesting. The questions are coming through, Eric. And the first one is, what was the first product that you made and sold?
It was a brownie. So it definitely was one of the products that the business was quite well known for quite some time. So it was actually a roasted macadamia nut brownie made from a 72% dark chocolate, which I sourced from 2 local chocolate companies, both based in Cape Town, that do amazing work in terms of buying their cocoa beans directly from Africa, supporting programs like the Rainforest Alliance back then. And working directly with cocoa farmers in Africa, helping them to improve their farms, and it's amazing to see over the years how those farms have actually improved. So the brownie was really a vehicle to support initiatives like that. But it's still one of the favorites.
But you always seem to work on these indulgent products, and all the years I've known you, you always stay physically in shape. It's a little bit of an oxymoron here.
I do have a massive sweet tooth. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of exercise. But I've definitely had my swings on overconsumption.
Okay. You got to taste it, otherwise you can't pass it, eh? Then the next question is, what is the most popular product that you've made in terms of, I gather, from commercial, success and turnover?
Well, one of our product ranges were confectionery sauces. So we supplied that into the fast food industry for milkshakes, beverages, and that definitely was one of the most major, at least in the time that it was my business. Those product ranges now, since Into Food has acquired the business, really evolved and changed. And there's quite a lot of, I'm literally sitting and I can see the development kitchen to my right. And they are actively working on new products every day that actually kind of come from that old yummy business and have evolved. But I would say definitely the confectionery sauces for gourmet milkshakes, that was a large favorite commercially.
Okay. We have another question from Astrid. Can you tell us a bit more about cognitive diversity?
Fantastic. That's a very interesting question, one that I'm very passionate about. So I sit in the same open plan office as a large part of our group HR team, and it really is a topic that we speak about quite often. And when referring to cognitive diversity, it really is about, as these days, if we mention diversity, first thing that jumps to mind is racial diversity or gender diversity, or those are really our high topics and really important. And cognitive diversity really comes from that, or that's one of the areas that it comes from, because it's different cultures, it's different backgrounds, different personalities. But what that really refers to is that you'll have somebody that's really numerically strong, and you'll have somebody that's very creative but maybe not that numerical. And when we construct our teams, when we approach problem solving, it really is about carefully pre-selecting that team and really pulling those colleagues and those members on that team from or that group from different teams in your business, because they'll have different perspectives, just because of their background, their experiences, and the way that they process problem solve. And that way you'll get more different views. I think we tend to, and I mentioned this in my talk, is when we recruit for a team, we really tend to group with people that we feel comfortable with. And 9 out of 10 times that is people that are very similar to ourselves. And that's something we have to be very careful of, because then you completely lack cognitive diversity. And that person would think in exactly the same way as what you do. And you'll have a very biased view on problem solving and innovation. There's actually some very interesting articles that you can read, especially on the Harvard Business Review. I think if you don't have an account with Harvard Business Review, you get about 3 free articles that you can view every month. Really go and abuse that, because they've got wonderful material, and their subscriptions are definitely worth it. But they've got some really interesting articles on cognitive diversity and how to actually implement that in an organization.
Okay, you have another one here from Angelique. When innovation takes off slower than the team had hoped, how do you maintain the team buy-in and motivation to ward off the shock of a perceived failure?
Very good question. That is a very difficult one. I can't say that I actually have the answer to that. I really think it comes down, personally for me, when the vision of the project is really clear. The purpose of why call it that innovation project is put in place in the first place. You know, what do we want to achieve? What do we want to reach with that? And it really is about reminding the team about that. Every now and again, it's definitely worth it to kind of rephrase it, get together, really relook at the problem, trying to go and identify why is it taking longer than we anticipated, and most of the times it actually does. I think, especially if you're a real optimist, you'll have very kind of short-term targets on what you want to achieve on that, and the danger on that is very often we get disappointed in that, and just to be aware of that. I don't have a clear answer, but I think to regroup the team, just recommunicate that vision and just try and get them excited. Maybe look at some business case studies of where other businesses have had similar problems, implemented similar innovation challenges, and how they overcame those, and that might get a bit of excitement going again.
Yep, no, sometimes it's difficult when you've got a tight time frame to make the innovation work. Here's another interesting multi-pronged question. Does an innovative idea have to always be something new, something that has never been done or said before?
Good one. Definitely not. Innovation can seem very boring sometimes. It could be it could be very simple, a simple process change. The cliche words to use these days are always, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we kind of jump to that always as a first thing. It can be very simple, like in my opinion, one of the most innovative things that we implemented in my business back then was that PDCA cycle that was basically troubleshooting processes in the factory. We had a physical paper template that was printed and hand-filled. I would probably recommend you to have that on a cloud or OneDrive using a simple Excel sheet, probably. But it was as simple as that. And as we sometimes had a colleague change in the business, for instance, a new product developer, somebody involved in production management, where you look at solving a certain process in a factory could take, a week, 2 weeks, trying to solve it. And if that's been solved before or something similar, it takes 5 minutes to read that piece of paper, and you save 2 weeks. It was as simple as that. That really wasn't an exciting innovation. Really wasn't groundbreaking. It was actually quite obvious, but it worked like a dream.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention, hey? We've got
no, sorry, Grant, you go for it.
There we are. We've got another young inquiring mind coming through, tapping into your database of info. Did you have a proper business plan when you started? Do you advise partnership or individual work when you start a business?
I love that question. I had no business plan. In fact, for the first year, I really didn't actually think I had a business. I was just having fun. It was profitable. It sustained itself. I had some extra money, but I never actually realized it was a business until the end of my gap year, actually, until I started studying. Actually, I had 2 ladies already baking for me at that stage, and so that was quite interesting. So it's kind of cool. And so I actually had no business plan. But I would advise, as soon as you know you're kind of on the track, is to set out long and short-term goals. going into phenomenal detail on a business plan, and this really is only my own opinion, especially in the early stages of the business, while it's small, it can be a waste of time. On a small business, factors change very quickly. You get a new business opportunity, or you lose one, and that business plan becomes completely irrelevant. I think it's just about setting certain goals that are really important, and that doesn't have to take a lot of time. You don't have to wait until you've got a proper business plan to start a business. In large businesses, obviously detailed budgets are very important, and there's a big value in that. But speaking about a young mind inquiring about a business, no, I'll be careful to spend too much time on that. And then the second part of the question, which really speaks to partnership, that I haven't made a better choice in my life than getting a business partner. I've had a few over the years, and each one of them were very different from one another and brought different skill sets to the table. I think driving a business can become very lonely when you really struggle with something. You tend to internalize it. You feel like you don't have a lot of people to speak to, which is not true, because I'm just amazed by mentors. Grant being a mentor for me over the years. Just when you ask someone for advice, how willingly most people are actually to give you very solid advice and really spend time with you, with no expectation in return. But it really helps to have someone on board in your business that's got some, call it, flesh in the game, and hopefully somebody, if you're quite young, that has a bit of experience in the game, I think is quite important.
Well, Eric, that was something that really, caught my attention when you specifically made mention of your close relationship with your ex-lecturers at Food Science. It's always very positive to see academia and industry working so close together. So that's a very nice positive sign.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I would encourage. Something that I definitely don't do enough of is to actually just pop by the food science department. But definitely something to focus on, and just to tap into amazing knowledge and the people that we've got close to us. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the end of the question. Just some really nice positive messages coming through, thanking you for the presentation, specifically linking it directly to your own success story. The first thing that I did jot down on my little pad here, and it's probably an old cliche, started my business in my mother's garage. And those were kind of your exact words. So it was another startup business, started in mom's garage and didn't look back. I think Mark Shuttleworth did the same thing. So long may the innovations that are going to make it start off in the garages.
Yes.
Okay, folks, that's kind of where we are. And thanks again, Eric. We really appreciate the time and the effort you put through to this presentation. And as the one person said, it really was a reflection on you and your life and your own success, which makes it far more meaningful. So thanks very much. We really appreciate your input today. And with that, I'll hand back to the organizers to tell us where we go from here. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you all. We can end the webinar now. Thanks, Eric.
For the opportunity. Have a nice day.
Okay, everybody, enjoy your afternoon.